Welcome to the Krista Escamilla Show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Krista Escamilla Show. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. As always, I appreciate it. I know your time is precious, and I know you're a busy person, and so thank you for spending this time with all of us and with the community. So before we jump into our amazing guest and hear about his story, I want to thank our sponsors, because without you, we would not be able to share the amazing stories of West Texans. So big thank you to Rig ID Workwear, to Attorney-Midland Hotel, to the Thin FR and Midland Cap Company, also to the Preserve at Midland, Laughlin Hotel, and joincapclub.com. But of course, as you know, I say every single week, support those local businesses how you can, or just support local wherever you're at. Local is where it's at. That's how you can support a neighbor, a friend, a family member's dream. Okay, now to introduce our amazing guest. I'm so excited to have him sitting here with us today, Midland County District Attorney Glenn Harwood, but his titles that I know are very near and dear to his heart. First of all, he is a Christian man. He is a husband, father, and grandfather. And so those are the titles I really like to highlight. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to introducing my office and myself a little bit to your listeners.
Awesome.
And your viewers.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for the time. I know we wanted to do this for a while, and so I'm excited. You've now been in this position over a year.
Yes.
But first, I want to hear how you got to West Texas, because I know no road is straight. There's definitely places that you went before Midland, Texas. So how'd you get here?
Well, it was a very circuitous route. Most recently, I got here because I retired from the Army in 2015, and I was hired by the U.S. Attorney to work in the Western District of Texas as a prosecutor. So, you want to hear background?
Yes, I'd
right.
love to. Well, first of all, thank you for your service.
That's
amazing. And how long were you in the Army?
I was in the Army for 22 and a half years.
Wow. That could be a whole podcast in itself of what you went through and the times that you learned there. But yeah, tell us a little bit of the background, like how you got in the Army.
Well, first of all, my dad was Navy. So we grew up in the military life, lived on both coasts. We lived in Hawaii. So I went to 10 different schools growing up.
Wow.
And actually enjoyed moving around. And then after college, I was trying to decide what to do, and I decided I wanted to be in the Army. So I enlisted in the Army and then went to officer candidate school. And 22 and a half years later, I retired. But in the meantime, my wife and I built a family, and we're glad to be here. Originally, I was hired to go work in El Paso, mm-hmm. And then the U.S. Attorney called me because I had told them, I have an aunt and uncle that raised their family in Midland. Oh, okay. So as I was young, we would travel through and stop periodically. My cousins were lifeguards at the Kimberly Pool. And so we would visit Midland, periodically. And so I had mentioned that during my interview. And so after they offered me the El Paso job, they called me later on that month and said, hey, would you rather go to Midland instead? And we came out and visited, and so we ended up in Midland. In fact, since we were moving from overseas, we had already gotten our cell phones. So we got 915 cell phone numbers. Oh, wow. And I had those for several years before I switched to 432. But I do remember the days where Midland was a 915 area code.
When I first moved here, it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we've been in Midland since 2015. And that's how we ended up here.
Fantastic. Well, I'm so glad you came here, and I'm glad that you were familiar with it, because sometimes when people say, oh, I'm going to Midland, they say, okay, where's that? And then people will rattle off, either home of George W. Bush or baby Jessica fell in the well, or,
mm-hmm.
some of the things that people know. But you were already familiar, been here, loved it, and knew what you were getting into, right? In fact,
in 1991, my wife and I had just been married for a couple of months, 3 months, and we lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And on a lark, the closest family that we had was my aunt and uncle. So we drove out to Midland to spend Thanksgiving in Midland back in 1991, not knowing that 24 years later we would settle here.
I love that. Well, it felt like home then, I'm sure, when you moved here in 2015.
It is. It's very different, and it's certainly home.
Yes. Well, we're glad you're here, and again, thank you for your service. Really quick, and we won't focus too much on that time, because then I want to find out how you got into this position that you're at. But tell us what it was like to serve our country for 22 years, because I think for someone like myself that went a different route and never ever served. I am just in awe of people that do choose the life of being in, whether it's Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. And so what was that experience like for you?
Well, it seemed like a natural thing to do because growing up, my father and all of the people that we were around were military. Mm-hmm. So it seemed very natural to join the military. I floundered a little bit after college professionally, trying to figure out what my life was going to look like. Mm-hmm. And so my wife and I, she agreed that we would give that a shot, and it worked out. So I went into it thinking I would do it for a few years and then do the next thing. Mm-hmm. And like a lot of people that join the military, a few years turns into a career. But I started in the infantry, and my first assignment was in Germany as a young infantry officer. And then, after another year or so, I was in the States doing some schooling, and I got accepted to the law school program. So I got a scholarship for law school. And so, I went to law school and I became an Army JAG. And then I had an obligation, and I fulfilled that obligation for the next 6 years. And then we just kept with it until we had done it for a full career. I served all over the United States. I served in Germany, my first assignment, my last assignment. I served in Korea. We were in Washington, D.C. We were in Virginia. We were in Fort Hood, Texas. We were in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, Fort Benning, Georgia. So, all over the United States. I went to Africa about 8 times with one assignment. I've been to combat 3 times. I went to Iraq twice. And I went to Afghanistan once. I've been to Macedonia for a 6-month deployment. So,
oh my goodness,
we got to travel the world, some together and some apart. But I loved it. It was a great career, and then in 2015, I decided that it was time to start building the next phase.
Yeah. What was the biggest life lesson you learned during your time in the Army?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and I think it served me well the last year, is the leadership aspect of it. That leadership is an intentional process. You can be good at your craft and be a lousy leader. And you can be a very good leader, and you don't have to be as good at your craft if you've got a good team around you. And so I think the best leaders are the ones that are both good at their craft, but also are intentional about leadership. And the military is very intentional about leadership. Mm-hmm. There's a certain span of control that they accept, and everybody's got some direct reports, and then everybody reports to someone else. And as you grow through the ranks, you get more and more responsibility. And so the leadership side, I think, was the biggest takeaway that I had, particularly leading lawyers, because that can be like herding cats.
Right.
You get in a room full of lawyers, and all of them think they're the smartest person in the room.
And they're all very smart.
And for the most part, they all are. They all think they're the best lawyer in the room. They think they're the smartest. So leading professionals like that can be challenging. Yeah. But that's, I think, the best life lesson I think that I took away from that.
Did you have a leader, or I'm bad at the ranks, so I don't know what would be about, like general or but did you have one in particular that maybe just gave you a piece of advice that you have carried through and has now helped you in your position today?
I think that the things that I've learned have come through a number of them. So I wouldn't say that there's any one in particular. And the beautiful thing is you can learn from the lousy leaders just as well as you can learn from the great leaders. That
is so true.
And while I, for the most part, had wonderful leaders, I did have one or two that I had to learn the negative lesson from. Mm-hmm. So I was very fortunate to have some very good leaders. In the JAG Corps especially, there were some leaders at the top of the JAG Corps that even though they ran an organization with 2,500 people, when it was your turn to be in front of them, they made you feel like you were the most important member of the team. And, so that was special.
I think that's a great point you just made right there, that a good leader gives their undivided attention when that person is in front of them and makes them feel like the most important part of the team, which they should feel like. I think because as you know, in a team, everybody's job is so important. But not every leader makes them feel that way.
Yes.
I love that you said that. I've been podcasting for years and I've never had anyone say it just like that. Elaborate on that, because I think that's a really key thing that you said.
Well, it's especially important, for example, in West Texas, because recruits don't just grow on trees out here.
Yeah.
It's a big event for someone to be in West Texas, and we've got to nurture those people that are here. And in my case especially, the people are the most important resource that I steward. So it's important to make sure that I pick the right people, and that I instill the right culture, and then work as hard as I can to retain them, because I can't just pick a replacement out of thin air. We don't live in Houston or Dallas or Austin, So yeah, that's important to me.
I love that. Okay, so if you were going to give advice, and then we're going to move into, I just have so many questions. I think it's amazing what you did serving our country. If you were going to give advice to someone that is maybe enlisting or is thinking about enlisting, what advice would you give to them?
I think that it's a wonderful way to start your life, whether you're enlisting or you're going into ROTC. One of my sons went through the ROTC program and spent a few years as an officer. But if you're a young person and you don't know what you want to do, or you know what you want to do and you don't have a way to pay for it, the military is a wonderful opportunity to learn some discipline, to get a job skill set. There's a lot of great professions that you can learn in the military that translate very well later. It's a wonderful way to earn money for college if that's what you want to do. And ultimately, it's a wonderful way to serve your country and your community. So it's a great place to start. It's not for everybody, but it's a great place to start.
I love that. Okay, so now let's transition, because how does one become a district attorney? I have no idea what the process is like or what the prerequisites are. I mean, anything like that. Just give us the rundown. How does it happen?
So I think everybody has a different path. Mine was a little bit unique for a couple of reasons. Number one, I didn't begin my career as a state prosecutor. In fact, prior to becoming district attorney, I had never prosecuted a case in state court. So that's one thing that's unique.
So most of them are?
Yes.
Okay.
Your average district attorney is somebody who's worked in the office for a number of years and promoted through the ranks, and sort of when it's their turn, a district attorney retires or decides not to run again, and then they'll run for election to replace that person, or possibly they'll get appointed by the governor to replace that person. Before I came along, it had been 40 years in Midland since an outsider had taken over the district attorney's office.
Wow.
Al Shorey in 1985 took over. He had been a civil attorney, I guess, and he came in and won an election and took over the office. But since then, it had been either him or his successor, or her successor after that. So that's typically how it happens.
Okay.
So me ending up here was an anomaly. I never expected being the one disadvantage of being a lifelong military brat and then a service member is you don't always have a home to go back to. So we made Midland our home, but I never expected politics would be part of the equation, because it's hard to move into a community and then convince that community that they should entrust you with what is arguably one of the most powerful elected positions in that community. So it was a unique experience that brought me to this point.
Right. Well, congratulations on being elected, and especially, as you said, being kind of new to the area again. Had been here before, but being new, that really speaks to you getting out and talking to people and during the election process, right? And
I think so.
And getting to know people, and then letting your bio stand for itself. Well, congratulations. Let's talk about day in the life of a DA, because I have no idea other than what I've seen on TV, and I love Blue Bloods. So have you ever seen Blue Bloods?
I have watched. I didn't watch the last season, but I watched the first 12 seasons.
Okay. So you're
yeah.
even farther than we are. We had a
yeah.
good friend that said, because we're getting older and getting closer to empty nesting, and we never really watched a lot of shows. And we're like, what shows are y'all watching? They said Blue Bloods. You'll love it. We're now hooked. We're like season 4 or 5, but that's about all I know is from watching the DA on the show.
Yeah, and actually, since I became a lawyer back in 2001, when I graduated law school, I actually don't like lawyer shows, but I love cop shows.
Yes.
But Blue Bloods is fun. So, in general, the district attorney is the chief law enforcement officer of the community. And so we're responsible in Midland, and different counties are different in Texas.
Okay.
But in Midland, my office is responsible for prosecuting misdemeanors and felonies. So it could be anything from speeding up to capital murder.
Okay.
We prosecute those. The only thing we don't prosecute is things in municipal court. And so that's Class C tickets issued by the police department.
Like speeding ticket?
A ticket that might be issued would be a speeding ticket, running a stop sign, or low-level theft or low-level assault.
Okay.
Those might be, so those are Class C misdemeanors. So if the police file a Class C misdemeanor, you'll end up in municipal court. But if that's issued out in the county by a deputy or at Midland College or at the hospital or by DPS, for example, those go to JP court.
Okay.
So we're responsible for prosecuting cases in JP court through the Class B and Class A misdemeanors that happen in our county courts at law, and then the felonies that happen in our district courts.
And I did not mean to raise my hand on the traffic ticket, speeding ticket, but that is about the only one I've had. So I understand that one. I've had a couple of those in my life. But I just am fascinated by this because I think there's so much that people don't know about the justice system. What do you think is the number one thing that people don't know that you want to kind of like crush the myth today?
Well, I don't know what they don't know. I will say that my office, we move a lot of cases. Literally thousands of cases a year come into our office. And so, for example, in the year 2025, we disposed of 8,500 cases.
Wow.
Misdemeanors, felony, juvenile cases. Okay. We had about 5,300 cases come in the door. About 30, roughly 3,300 misdemeanors came in the door, and about 2,000 felonies, and another almost 400 juvenile cases. So the volume that we're working with is incredible. Sometimes we're down. When I started, the office was budgeted for 25 attorneys, and they had 15 attorneys. But within about 6 weeks, we were down to 9 attorneys. Wow. So we've had to build the office back up, and we just have an incredible volume. So, so it's important that I have a good team because I can't handle 5,000 cases.
That's a lot of cases. Yes, you have to have a team.
It has to be a good team, and I have a wonderful team.
How do you convince them to take the job?
So my MO has been, hey, come and serve your community and take a pay cut and work for me. And a bunch of them did it.
They said yes.
Yes.
It was that pay cut that really just hooked them in.
We did. We almost every attorney I've hired has taken a pay cut to come and work in Midland County. Because they're public servants, because they believe in what we're doing. They're willing to give me a shot and and build something from the ground up that's pretty special. So the other thing we've done, people say, oh, it's hard to get lawyers to come to West Texas, but we've had just a wonderful success with building our office from the ground up with new prosecutors and interns. And one of the things I'm most proud of is the pipeline that we've developed. I had 5 legal law school interns work for us last summer, and 4 of them are coming back. 2 of them are coming back as lawyers, and 2 of them are coming back because they're in their next year of law school. I have 4 graduating law students right now that have already committed to come work for me in May, and I'll probably hire 1 or 2 more. I have 7 students that are in their second year of law school that are going to come work for me in the summer. And I have a couple, and I'll probably end up with 4 or 5 first-year law students that'll come work for me in the summer. And the hope is that those students, come back the following summer, and then they come back and work for us. So we're trying to build a pipeline. Before I took over the office, there hadn't been a new law school graduate hired by that office in years and years. So it's the first 6 months, that's basically all I did is recruit. I went to Tech a couple of times, and I have one of my sons is actually a law school student up there.
Oh, that's great.
In fact, one of my first hires is a Midland kid that grew up in Midland and went to MCA and then was graduating from Tech Law School. So
love that. You're bringing him back home.
We're bringing him back home. My second hire was a young lady who graduated from Greenwood High School and was graduating from Texas A&M. So I've got a good mix of young law students and young attorneys who have Midland ties, and then I have a fair number who've given us a shot. So, but I spent literally weeks just recruiting. I went to SMU, I went to Texas Tech, I went to St. Mary's a couple of times. I drove as far as College Station and had people from Houston meet me in College Station for interviews.
Wow.
And the other thing I did is I did it personally. And a lot of people were surprised, and they said, "Oh, I've interviewed at a lot of DA's offices, but the DA, isn't the one that interviews me. It's some assistant district attorney." And I understand that, but I felt like if, the first rule of being the leader of a team is you have to have a team.
Yes.
And it's a big deal to ask people to, who aren't from here to uproot their lives and move to Midland. And I felt like I owed them, the full opportunity. So we would interview, and I would spend a lot of time getting to know them. And then if we liked them, we would invite them to come to Midland to see how committed they were. And a good number of them would fly or drive to Midland on their own expense, and they'd spend the day with us, and they could meet our team. They could see our beautiful facilities. We have a great courthouse.
Yes.
And we would take them to lunch, and if they were still interested, then we'd make them a job offer. And so recruiting has been, that was my number one priority in the last year. And it's sort of a continuing priority for me.
Are you still looking for more?
We're always hiring. Okay. We're basically fully staffed. But like I said, as we build the pipeline, normal attrition for an office might be anywhere from 10 to 20% in the year for attorneys. We've had some wonderful attorneys that have left us in the last year. People decide it's time for a career change. We had one who had a spouse that was transferred to Houston. Occasionally, people decide being a prosecutor is not for them. So attrition is normal. So we always have to have a pipeline, and so we're always recruiting and always hiring. I'll tell you another thing that I've learned is it's almost as hard to hire a good administrative person as it is to hire attorneys, because the county budget is, we're trying to be good stewards, and we're not able to throw a bunch of money at our, administrative staff. And I have a sizable administrative staff. So that's difficult as well, getting people to come and work for the, for the amount of money that we're able to pay them. So the people that do, I have to treat them well and make sure that we can keep them. People are going to leave, but I don't ever want somebody to leave because of the culture or because of burnout. My view is this is a long race. This is not a sprint. And so we try to establish that culture in that work environment.
That's wonderful. We're sitting here today in Midland, Texas with Midland County District Attorney Glenn Harwood, and we're talking all the things we haven't even gotten into fatherhood and all that. We will in just a second. But first, Glenn, we do something called Quote of the Day. And so I'm just going to mix these up a little bit. You pick whichever one you want. You had no idea you were going to be picking quotes, did you?
Okay.
You got the encourage card. Awesome. What does the quote say on the back?
Leadership is not about titles, positions, or flowcharts. It's about one life influencing another. That's John Maxwell.
What a perfect quote for you to pick. What does that mean to you?
Wonderful.
We're just talking about leadership. Yes.
It is. I mean, Maxwell's premise is that leadership is about influence, and that's right. And that applies in both formal structures where you're, a leader by position, and authority, but also informal structures where you're a leader by influence and relationship and things like that. So it is influencing others, and it's training others, it's affirming others, and it's establishing a culture. So yeah, I think that's spot on.
Yes, absolutely. I love that you got that card. What's your favorite quote? Do you have one that you live by that guides you?
Well, that's appropriate for a podcast.
Hey, appropriate, inappropriate, doesn't matter. There are no FCC rulings here.
I'll tell you, one of the guiding principles that drives me is out of Proverbs right now, and it's Proverbs 17:15, and it says, "Acquitting the guilty and convicting the innocent, the Lord hates them both." So it just reaffirms for me that it's important that we do our job right. We don't want people who don't belong in the justice system, and we don't want people who belong in the justice system to slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
So it's important that we get it right to both protect the innocent and to hold the guilty accountable.
That is a great quote, and I think that's so true, and not just what you do, but in life in general. And
it is.
It's so easy to rush to judgment these days. It seems like, because we live in this fast-paced social media world.
Yes.
How do you? Maybe you can shed some light on this. How do you not do that? Because it is so easy. You see people fighting, and if you know me, and if you know me personally, I cannot stand fighting. I am just I want peace, love, and happiness for everyone. I want everyone to look for the good every day and find it. But in this world, we see a lot of the opposite of the fighting and the bashing so how do you not rush to judgment?
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, I'm 56 years old, and that's relevant because I've been to war 3 times. Yeah. I know what's an emergency, I know what's a crisis, and I know what's not. Mm-hmm. So it's relevant in terms of sort of life experience. I've been working in the criminal justice system. In the military, I spent most of my time as a prosecutor. I also did defense work. I was a federal prosecutor for 6.5 years. I was a defense attorney for a couple of years before I took over. Mm-hmm. So perspective is one thing. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, because I'm 56 as opposed to 36, I'm at the stage in my life where I'm not worried about building something. For me personally, I've had 2 very successful careers. I am honored to serve as the district attorney, and because of where I am in life, I'm free to do what I think is right. I don't have to worry about, well, what if somebody doesn't like it? The reality is there is somebody that doesn't like it. I'm always upsetting somebody. The issue is to manage their disappointment. I don't want to. Sometimes law enforcement's upset with our office. Sometimes victims are upset with our office. A lot of times defense attorneys are upset with our office. A lot of times the public's upset with our office. The key is to manage the disappointment so that everybody's not upset with our office at the same time.
Yes. That's got to be hard, Glenn.
It's very hard, but managing disappointment is one of the key things I do. But ultimately, I feel free to do the best job I think I know how to do, and trust the public with that. And they get to choose in 4 years if I've done a good job for them. But just being older and having some perspective allows me to step back. And I've had a lot of situations in the last year where people want something, but that's not the right answer. We're not gonna do ready, shoot, aim. We're gonna be deliberate. Part of the reason I was able to be elected is because I think I provided a contrast that the community hadn't seen in a while, where I was able to articulate, with some judgment and discernment, and not responding reactively to pressure, allows you to make better decisions than if you're quick to rush to judgment.
Yes.
I might think I know what the right answer is, but it's never going to hurt me to take a step back and talk to people who are experienced, that I respect, to let the facts develop completely, to let investigations be complete before we make, decisions that are hasty. So, in business, they say you can have speed, quality, or it be inexpensive, but you only get 2. In the justice system, you only get 1. And quality is the only thing I care about. If it takes longer to get it, and if it costs more in investment in investigations and process, the only thing I care about is quality. So I'm not worried about speed. I want to work with due haste, But I can't let externalities rush me. And it costs money to do things right sometimes. So quality is the only thing I'm shooting for.
I love that. Gosh, so many good things that you just said. That's fantastic. What are you most proud of that you and your team have done this year or in the past year that you've been leading them?
I'm most proud of the team.
Yeah.
We went from 9 attorneys in the last, from basically when I started, the group that stuck around and the ones that made it through the first few weeks. We were at 9 attorneys. Since then, we've hired 18 attorneys. Wow. And so, and some of them I've known for a decade. One of them I've known for 20 years. Some of them walked off the street and walked into our office. So we've just built a wonderful team. So we're kind of flying the plane as we, as we're building it. I hired 6 young prosecutors that started in September after they graduated law school and took the bar exam. So I'm most proud of the team we've developed, and we're now getting our systems in place to where we can do good work. So when I ran and won, I established my priorities. Number 1 were reestablishing relationships with law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And number 2 was reestablishing relationships and reputation in the community. And then number 3 was improving the quality of our investigations, case preparation, and prosecution. And I feel like we've made great strides in all 3 of those areas, and we're going to keep improving in all 3 of those areas.
You have to deal with a lot of different people in the community, and I'm sure that at times you see people at their best, at times you see people at their worst, at times you see people that are fighting, at times you're not. I feel like you're the type of guy that, and I've just met you, but you're like, you just want people to do the right thing, right? It's just like, do the right thing. What would you say to the community in general, or just people in general, our listeners, our viewers that are spending this time, thank you for spending this time with us, like about doing the right thing? Because I think it's such an important point to make in the world, is just do good, do the right thing.
I would definitely say that. In fact, when I swore in and I got to give a little speech, I spent some time in Romans, and I quoted and actually read Romans 1-4. And that talks about, the arm of government is the Lord's servant for the good of the people. And if you're doing good, you have nothing to fear. But if you're doing wrong, then you're going to face, the wrath of the government. And my office, along with the rest of law enforcement, is the one that wields that sword. Mm-hmm. And so we just have to be very careful how we wield that sword, because we don't want to, harm people who are innocent bystanders. Right. So people who are doing the right thing should have nothing to fear. And I think that's Romans 13:3. But if they're wrongdoers, they do have some things to fear, in the form of being held accountable by our system. So we want the community to be law abiding, mm-hmm. But I also want them to know that I have good people working for me who want to do the right thing. Yeah. And we don't get it right with disposing of 8,500 cases in one way or the other. We're gonna miss the mark on some things, but it's not because we don't care, and it's not because it's not because we don't want to serve the community well. The culture I've tried to establish is one that, and I told them, I said, by serving in this role, you're serving the community, you're serving the Lord, whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. The Bible says that this is the Lord's, servant for the the people's good. So what we're doing is important for the community, and those are the kind of people that I've tried to surround myself with, so doing good is important.
It is so important, and I think we all, especially, and everybody deserves to live in a safe place, mm-hmm. and we all want to raise our kids in a safe place, and I feel like Midland, Texas is a safe place. Of course, we there's always room for growth, right? But that is not because of what anybody else is doing. It's just because if more people just chose the good and
yes.
to do the good, then we could live in an even safer place. So that's the message today.
the difficulty too, for example, with our misdemeanors, is we have people who are generally good and law-abiding, but then they make some bad decisions. And so, it's difficult for people to separate out a person's overall good qualities with, the fact that maybe they were drinking and driving, or the fact that they got drunk and ended up, getting into, a physical altercation with their family or something like that. So the judgment calls we make and that law enforcement makes are really complex because a lot of times we have people who generally are doing good, and then they find themselves on the wrong side of the law. And we can't just give it a pass, but we have to exercise judgment in how we deal with it. And then, of course, we sometimes find people who don't have a criminal past who are in very serious trouble. And so it's, when I ran, what I said I thought I would bring to the office was leadership, stewardship, and judgment. And the judgment it's really tough because we're making judgments that none of the stakeholders agree on what should happen, and we're dealing with important matters. We're dealing with people who've been hurt, or we're dealing with crimes against the community and public safety. We're dealing with defense attorneys who are doing their best to represent their clients. We're dealing with judges. We're dealing with juries, and it's a messy system, but it's our system, and so we just have to do our best with it.
Do you believe in second chances?
I do believe in second chances, and I'm glad that people have an opportunity to have second chances. And the difficulty comes. There are some things that we do in society, or that some people do in society, that the risk to society and the harm to a victim is so severe that that confinement is really the only option. Now, having said that, that's in a physical community sense. In terms of whether someone is too far gone for the Lord to save their soul, well, that's a different story. I think there's
not for us to.
There's always the opportunity for the redemption of somebody's soul. There's not always the opportunity to live free in society again if you've committed some kind of a serious crime. Just last Friday, a jury sentenced a 19-year-old young man to 75 years in prison because he killed a lady. He will not see the light of day for at least 30 years and possibly longer. And that's a tough pill for a 19-year-old to swallow. But the harm was so great that that's what the jury did with it. And I hope he gets a chance to meet the Lord and have the Lord redeem his soul, which he certainly can. But that's a different question than whether or not we have to hold them accountable in society and execute serious punishment at times.
Well said. I can tell you're good at your job. What do you love about it?
I love going to work and being with the people. In the several years that between the time where I left the U.S. Attorney's office and swore in, I basically worked by myself, and I am not a loner. I'm a people person. I love going to work. There's about 50 people in my office, and I get to see them every day, and I get to walk the halls and ask them how they're doing, and I spend a fair amount of my day just doing that. So it's being with the people, and it's being with the people who want to do right. There's some administrative staff in my office that have worked for the county for 35 years, 30 years. My office manager's been with the county for 30 years and in the district attorney's office for probably 28 of those years. And I've got another lady that's been with the county for 35 years. Wow. And several that have been there for close to 20 years. So they know the entire history of the office, and they've been there forever. And they want to work in the Midland County DA's office, and I love that. And it doesn't matter who the DA is; they've been there for 3 or 4 DAs now. Mm-hmm. And the kind of people that are prosecutors, I love being around, because, like I said, they are making far less than they would make, a hot shot for one of these oil field service companies right out of high school makes more than my prosecutors to start. But these are the kind of people that have taken their law degree and they've decided to serve their community, and they want to fight for justice. And I love being around people like that.
I love that. Yeah. That's amazing. I've got one more thing, and then we're going to talk fatherhood because I want to know what it's like to be a child of someone that's a DA, because your kids can't argue with you, can they?
Well, I have a 9-year-old that's very good at it.
All right, we're going to talk fatherhood in just a minute, but first, this is question of the day. So
Okay.
just pick a question, you answer the question. Which one did you get?
If we looked in your camera roll, what photo would make us laugh?
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Probably the photo of me sitting at the Oaks Coffee Shop in a Santa Claus outfit this last Christmas for some friends and taking pictures with a bunch of little kids. That would probably be it.
I think that's great. You got to play Santa.
I usually every November and December I let my beard grow long. One of my life goals is to take off November and December, have a long white beard, and just be Santa Claus full time for about 2 months. So
right. Well, I have a friend that does that. I don't know if you know. I don't want to. Well, I can out him. He's known as Santa, but Scott Wyndham. He does this. He does that exact same thing.
I love
it. He grows it out long. I mean, he is Mr. Santa for West Texas. So I'll connect the two of you. He would love to share Santa duties with you. I'm sure.
I'm getting to the age where I don't need the white hair because I've got enough, and unfortunately, I'm getting to the age where I don't need to stuff a pillow into my suit either. But so that's probably the pictures that would make someone smile.
That's great. So let's talk about being a dad. I know, I mean, I can tell that you and your wife, I've seen y'all in public, amazing parents. What do you love about being a parent? And then what is it like for one of your kids to have to, tell you why they were late for, from curfew?
If I can start, we have 4 kids the old-fashioned way. My oldest moved to Midland with us in 2015, and then 3 weeks later left for college. He is now married. He has 2 children and 1 on the way, and he's a third-year law student at Tech. And then my next daughter is, she graduated from Lee in 2016, and then she graduated from A&M, and she came back to Midland. She was a teacher for a few years, and then she married a petroleum engineer, and they have a son and then a daughter they're fostering that they're going to be adopting soon.
Aww.
And they only live about 1.5 miles from our house, so we get to see them a lot.
You're so lucky.
Very lucky.
Yes, that's awesome.
And then my number 3 daughter graduated from Lee in 2019, and she's at Dallas Baptist University where she works, and she just got married, and her husband's an accountant, so they're in Dallas. We don't get to see them as often as we would like. And then my number 4, who was friends with some of your kids, graduated from A&M. He graduated from Lee in 2021, and then he went to A&M, and he just started law school up at Tech. So he and his wife are up at Texas Tech. So that's
awesome.
We call them the OG. We did that the old-fashioned way. But after we moved to Midland in 2015, after a couple years, we decided that we wanted to look into foster care with the goal of just providing a safe home for people in transition. And what we learned very quickly is sometimes they don't leave. So over the next several years, we adopted 2 different children from foster care. So in addition
That's
to
awesome.
the 4 OG, we have a 13-year-old who we adopted in 2019. And now we have a 9-year-old also that we adopted in 2022, and she'd lived with us for about 3 years before that. So I have them from age 9 all the way up to 29, and so that's my crew.
That's a big gap. Yes, and so you've seen a lot in your parenting journey.
We have. I will say that I am a much better parent at 56 than I probably was at 36.
Yeah, I get that.
It takes me about 4 times longer to get off the ground, but. It's very different parenting in your 50s.
Absolutely. I mean, I can imagine. I mean, I know just from me going from like the first to the 4th, and our older kids would say, "You would have never let us do that, right?" You've probably heard that by that 4th one. But you just live, you learn, you grow as a parent. But what is best parenting advice that you could give to someone, because you are definitely seeing all the stages?
Well, I think what we learned early on, especially if you have a lot of kids, is it's a little counterintuitive and it's a little contrary to normal cultural understanding, but the kids are not the center of our life.
Yeah.
They're a part of our life. My wife and I were together for a number of years before we had kids, and we're going to be together long after all the kids are gone. So they're an important part of our life, but they have never been the center of our family. Our marriage is the center of our family, built around our relationship with Christ and our relationship with each other. And the kids are a bonus, and they're a wonderful bonus. But none of my kids ever had to wonder, where my loyalties lie. And so, that's.
I love that.
That's
I think
where
that's
we're
important.
at. Yeah.
Because a lot of time, you raise the children and then it's time for empty nest. And because it's been so kid focused, and we're not saying don't focus on your kids. I mean, they're important, but I understand what you're saying. And because then there's that, then you're looking at that stranger across you when the kids leave. And so you never want that. So I think it's always good advice to always put your spouse and God first and spouse, because that's who you're creating. Not only the family for the kids to see, but for you and your husband or wife after the kids are gone. And I love that you mentioned that, because people ask us all the time, what are you gonna do when you're empty nest? We're like, well, let us tell you. We've got a list a mile long. We're excited. We're ready for this next season. Yeah. Right.
Well, and because of the way it worked out and the age we are, we've put off our empty nest by about 15 years by fostering and adopting. So, right. I mean, instead of planning our next weekend jaunt, we're having to check the MSA, soccer schedule to see when our 9-year-old is going to be playing goalie with the Bluebirds, this season. So, for me, it's not as difficult as it is for my wife, because in my 50s, I'm still going to work every day like I was in my 40s and 30s, and I still would be going to work in my 50s and 60s. So her life is the one that's dramatically different, just by virtue of the fact that we signed on to do this parenting thing for another 15 years or so.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Well, I commend you for what you're doing. I think it's awesome. I love when I see, foster families turn into adopted family. I think that's beautiful for you to do that, and just for you to be able to share that experience. And really quick, before we go on to the next thing, what is it like for one of your kids to say, hey, I'm late? Like, what does that look like coming in at the end of the night when you're the DA?
Well, my original gang, the motto that we had in our family was, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late, and you're never late. So timeliness, particularly with my background, is a characteristic that I value. If I can get back to adoption real quick,
yes,
I just want to say, the thing that I love most about it, the Bible talks about adoption in the context of the Lord adopting us as His children. And so adoption is the symbol that He chose to use. But just like with our spiritual adoption, the difficulty with adoption is it requires a death first. It requires a death of the old relationships, of the old person. The only way you can adopt a child is if their parents die, and our 9-year-old, her mother actually did pass away. Or if they're abandoned somehow, or the state, terminates their relationship. But the point is that old relationship is gone, and you get a new relationship. And so just like in our relationship with the Lord, our old life is gone. Yeah. And there's a death of that old life before you get the new life. So it's a beautiful image, and it's a special thing, and it's been very enriching for us to be a part of that, and to live through the highs and lows of that process.
Yes, and I'm sure there are many highs, many lows. Yes, thank you for sharing that. We're getting close to the end of we've got 5 minutes. So really quick, we do something called Favorite Things. And so I shout out, okay, one thing. So you tell me your favorite song.
I don't know.
It's a tough one, I know.
I like, I like country music.
Don't have a favorite hype song? You're walking into the court. You're like, this is playing. Like, for me, it'd be "Don't Stop Believing."
So I don't. I'm a little bit boring. Yeah, I don't really have a favorite. It's more of a genre.
All right, favorite genre.
The song that I wake up to is "A Million Dreams" from Greatest Showman.
I love that song.
So that's on my alarm, and so I guess
that.
Before that it was Taylor Swift and Tim McGraw, "The Highway Don't Care."
Yes.
So I guess when the next one strikes me, I'll change my alarm to that song. But it's a million dreams right now. Greatest Showman is one of my favorite movies. It's a great musical. So
I love that. Yeah. I am like so excited that you love Greatest Showman. It's one of my favorite movies.
At my former office, at the U.S. Attorney's office, we actually took a day and brought our lunches in and sat and watched The Greatest Showman together, because some of the other prosecutors there loved it as well.
That's great.
The soundtrack is fantastic, and so I would say that's one of my tops.
Love it. Favorite fun fact about you we would not know by reading your awesome bio?
I have sailed across the Atlantic twice.
Very cool. Yeah. That is a fun fact. Wow, I've never met anyone that's done that. That's really cool.
Not solo, but early in my college career, I went to the Coast Guard Academy for 2 years, and that's part of their training is sailing. Yeah. And so I've been on a tall ship and sailed across the Atlantic.
Very cool. All right, favorite life hack, something that makes your life a little easier.
I would say, I don't know if it's a hack, but I would say that the way you handle money can either add stress to your life or take stress away. So, financial discipline, I would say, is something that I think is important for people to master. And I feel like, particularly when you're a public servant, I can't out earn bad decisions. So, so we're pretty disciplined financially, and that frees us up to do public service. It frees us up to do the things that God may call us to do by not being over leveraged and in a difficult position.
Love that. All right, and finally, favorite coffee shop in West Texas.
So I have 3 different friends in Midland that own coffee shops. So I will say what they are.
Yeah.
12 Gate is owned by a friend of mine. And that's a wonderful coffee shop. Cafeology is owned by a friend of mine.
Good one.
And the Oaks is owned by a couple that I'm close with. So so I go to all of those. And,
nice.
And don't put me on the spot as to those 3. But those
we'll
are
make it pick
those
a
are
favorite.
the 3 that,
we'll just shout them out.
Yeah.
Love to shout out local.
Yeah.
So if you haven't been to those, check those out.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for this time today. I have so enjoyed getting to know you better. I want to close out by asking you, is there anything we haven't talked about today that you were hoping that we would talk about? Maybe what you want your legacy to be as the DA, anything in general that you're like, oh, I wish we would have mentioned that.
I would say that I'm proud to be the district attorney. I every single day, I do not take it lightly that the people have entrusted me with this. I'm honored. I want to serve them well, and humility is my greatest need, and it's my greatest prayer, because it's very weighty, and so I'm just glad to be the district attorney, and I'm honored to do it.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for serving our country, for serving our community, and for really serving the people of West Texas, because we will be better because you're in this position. So thank you for that. I appreciate you. And it was fun getting to know you better. I'm going to think of A Million Dreams. Every time I see you, I'm like, yes, fellow Greatest Showman. I love it. It is. If you're ever having a bad day, watch The Greatest Showman. You cannot help but smile after that.
Wolverine can definitely sing.
He can. Yes. Oh, yes. I mean... Oh, and if you haven't seen Sung Sung Blue, he is amazing as the Neil Diamond.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
You haven't seen it yet?
I know about it, but I haven't seen it
Oh,
yet.
highly recommend. If you love Hugh Jackman, you are going to love that movie.
Yes.
But I see I could talk movies all day and songs. But thank you for this time. I really appreciate you and all you're doing for our community and for us getting to know you better today. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for letting me talk about my office, and it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for listening. Share this with someone in West Texas. Remember, we are all in this together, and we're better together. So to get to know someone like our DA and what they do and understand the job and the responsibility, it just makes you, even more proud of our community. I already love our community so much, but after listening today, even more proud. So thank you. Share this. Also, our sponsors, we cannot do this without you. And of course, don't forget my mottos that I just believe wholeheartedly with my whole heart. That's a double entendre. But dream big, believe, and never give up. You make it a great day. And we will see you next time on the Krista Escamilla Show. Thanks for joining us.